Have you ever scoured a forum like Reddit or Quora trying to find some bit of information that you needed? Have you ever maybe went to a vehicle forum to try and figure out how to turn off that really annoying seatbelt dinger in your car? Internet forums are full of so much useful and absolutely useless information. Forums are great, but leave it up to colleges to transform forums into a device of torment and dread in the online classroom. Welcome to the wonderful world of academia. Thankfully, I'm here to help. Discussion boards and online classroom forums don't have to be a bane on your existence as an online student. Today, I'm going to give you all of my top tips, tricks, and the most common pitfalls that I've seen on discussion board forums as an undergraduate student and a graduate student online over the last 5 years of my online experience. Let's get started. Welcome to Bartley and a Bible. If you're new here to the channel, my name is Bartley. Here we talk about seminary and the Bible. Today we're digging into the topic of online seminary forum prompts, posts, and even those pesky mandatory replies. So here we go. The first question that we want to answer today is, what is a discussion board? Let's just talk about online classroom discussion boards for a minute. Just think about, picture in your mind a Twitter thread. Somebody goes on to Twitter and they have something that they want to communicate, so they go through a thread because each tweet is only allowed to have so many characters in it. And this person goes with this thread and they post tweet after tweet until they get all of the information together that they want, and it's available for people to read as a Twitter thread. Or imagine, if you will, a Facebook post. Imagine you're on your friend's Facebook page and they have posted some long, lengthy post about a vacation that they took to the mountains. And along with that post, there are pictures of the trip that they took and all the things that they got to do while they were there. Now, underneath both the Twitter thread and underneath the Facebook post with the pictures about vacation, there are comments and replies underneath. And the people who are commenting and replying are on the Twitter feeds. Most of the time they're probably arguing, or they have some sort of negative thing to say. Most of the time the people who agree with the tweet are probably going to retweet it, or they're going to like it. When you're on Facebook and you have this vacation post about a nice family vacation or whatever the case is, the people underneath are often commenting their agreement with how awesome the trip looks, with how amazing the pictures are, with all of the wonderful things that they got to do while they're there. Imagine the discussion board to be sort of like this, only extremely forced, extremely mandatory. So because of that, it's extremely dry, it's extremely dead. Nobody wants to do it. It's a torment. It is an annoyance to the learning process when it comes to online seminary for most people. In the discussion board, the way these assignments work is you are required, at Liberty, they have a post-first forum prompt. So the way that works is you go into the assignment and you will have to read the instructions, you'll have to read the prompts. Often those prompts are a statement that you either have to agree with or disagree with, and then you have to give your rationale for why you agree or disagree. Or it could be that there's a question or a series of questions that you're required to respond to for that forum post. And what post first means is that you actually have to post your original post. Imagine it like a Twitter thread, or like that post that someone posted about their vacation. It is the original post. You have to post that. I said post a lot there. You have to post that onto the forum before you can actually see what other people have posted, so that you can't copy their discussion board. Now, once you have completed your response to that statement or to those questions or whatever the prompt is, then you're able to see everyone else's post as well. And each one of those assignments At the school that I go to, with each one of those assignments, you're required to respond to anywhere from 1 to 3 other students in the classroom. And those responses can vary. You can disagree with the student, you can agree with the student, you can point out some hole you think that's in their logic or in their reasoning or whatever the case may be. But you're required to do at least whatever the instructions lay out. You're required to do at least that many replies. The rationale behind why online schools do discussion boards or discussion forums is to try and make up for the lack of academic discussion that would normally take place between student and professor, or between the classroom and the professor in the lecture hall or in the classroom. You don't have that classroom setting inside of an online classroom like Canvas. So this is kind of an intermediary thing that they do to try and replicate that communication, to replicate that conversation that's had. The only problem is most of the time it feels really forced. It feels like busy work. It feels like something that's just interrupting the time that you could actually be reading what you're supposed to be reading or watching presentations you're supposed to watch. But I digress. So before we move on, hopefully that gives you a good understanding of what a discussion board assignment is in the online college classroom or the online seminary classroom. But before we move on from that, I want to give you just an example of what one of these looks like in my online class. So I'm going to put up for you just a prompt for my most recent discussion board. This was due just a week or so ago in one of my online classes that I'm currently in right now. Now, as you can see on your screen there, I have highlighted in red, and just in case you couldn't see that, I also drew arrows pointing to what the actual prompt for this discussion board is. And you can see there that there's a series of several questions, and this is, of course, the graduate level. This is a 500 level Old Testament class at Liberty University. And the questions are: how did the Old Testament law function in ancient Israel? What was its purpose and significance for the ancient Israelite? And then it goes on to step 2, which would essentially be the second section of your forum post, and that is: what is theological function of the law according to the scripture? How does the law function in salvation history? Be sure to use New Testament references in supporting your answer. And then the third section for this post would be answering the question: what application does the law have for 21st century Christians? And in your response, consider this question in both the practical and theological realms. So the way that would work is I would go in and take those questions. Usually I'll copy and paste into a Word document those questions, and I will go to work on this forum post. Once that post is completed, the way that I like to do things is I just copy and paste from Microsoft Word, because it typically makes it easier for your formatting to be correct to just copy and paste from Microsoft Word. So that's what I do. For my Word document, I copy and I paste it into the actual forum post section on Canvas. And like I said, once that's done, then I find 2 other students in the classroom that have posted, and I take the time to reply to their posts. And one of the things about these discussion boards that's important is this is meant to be academic conversation. So everything that you do inside of your forum post and inside of your replies have a requirement for how many academic sources that you have to interact with and how many sources that you have to cite in your post. But I mean, it's grad school, so you're going to expect that. If you don't know how to deal with research, if you don't know how to cite sources, if you don't know what a scholarly source is, you probably haven't made it to the graduate level yet. But let's move on. You understand what we're talking about. Now, the second question that I want to address is number 2, what are the most common pitfalls that I've seen in my experience as an online undergraduate and graduate level student? So this is a pet peeve of mine. The biggest mistake, the biggest pitfall that I have seen in my time at the undergraduate level and really surprisingly, in high-level graduate classes, what I have seen are so many grammar issues. People who don't know the difference between there, and there. So many people who don't understand when you should put an apostrophe in the word it's. Ugh! This drives me absolutely insane. One of the easiest things that you can do as a graduate student or as an undergrad student is to make sure that you use proper grammar. It's not that hard. Matter of fact, our school at Liberty, they have provided within our tuition like Grammarly, which is of course a service that you can download onto your computer that will check all of your grammar for you. Why would you not use it? Use the resources and make sure that you're using proper grammar. You're a grad student, for goodness sakes. And as you would expect, professors at the graduate level are not going to put up with your constant misspelling, misuse of grammar. The second pitfall that I have noticed that is most common among all of my classes has been just this lack of effort that you can see from other students. And I know that the attitude comes from a place of, well, forum posts, discussion boards are not weighted as heavily as essays and research papers and other assignments throughout the course. Typically, discussion boards only account for about 10 to 20% of your overall grade in any given class. When you combine the low weight or the low percentage of your actual final grade that forum prompts represent, and you also factor in that discussion boards are very similar to social media, what you get is this really lazy, half-done effort for most of the students where it almost reads like a Facebook post, or it almost reads like a beginner blog post. It's just absolutely terrible to have to sit and to have to read. Statements are sloppy, words that are used are sloppy, and they don't really fit the context, which makes it very easy for students like me who take discussion boards seriously and actually do my best, because it gives me lots of things to critique, we'll say. When replying to those students' forum posts, I can point out flaws because there are many of them that come from that lack of effort that gets put into forum posts. That is one of the biggest pitfalls. Just because you look at the numbers and this thing is only worth 15% of your grade does not mean it's not important. If for nothing else, you can use these discussion boards, you can use these forum posts and these replies to your classmates to hone the craft of academic writing, because you're going to use that in the research paper that you have to write at the culmination of the class. You're going to use that in any essay or any assignment that you have to do. So why would you not take the opportunity to use this small assignment that's not going to take you very long to hone that craft and do the best that you can? The third pitfall that I've seen from many online students is very little interaction with the scholarly sources that they actually cite. Why would you cite something just as a random quote and then not even say anything about the quote? There are so many times that I look at someone's forum post and it is the most annoying thing. I will look and they'll post a Bible verse. For instance, somebody will post something as a citation of like Isaiah chapter 53, verse 1 and 2, which says, "Who has believed our message, and whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him." And they just quote that in their post, and then the next line that they write about is about spaceships or something. Okay, it's usually not that bad, but you get the idea. Why would you quote something and not interact with the actual quote? Why would you quote something and not give your thoughts on the quote, not make any assertions based on what that quote is telling you? Why would you not use it to further your argument? Instead, what most people do, and one of the biggest pitfalls, is that people just cite random stuff. People just quote random things and then give their opinions that have absolutely nothing to do with the quote just so they can meet the quota for how many sources are required to be there. For one, you're dealing with grad school professors who are going to see that and they're going to be like, wow, this is ridiculous, and they're going to take points off for that. Why would you not use that opportunity to get better at this? Why would you not post something that actually furthers your argument? Why would you not cite something that actually furthers your argument and proves your point even stronger, whatever the point may be? So that's one of the biggest pitfalls that I see. You are a graduate student. Just because you're in the online classroom doesn't mean that you get away with these things. And I think people feel like they do because it has this social media, Facebook, Instagram type feel to it. But it's not. It's an actual classroom. Why would you not do your absolute best on these posts? Cite things, use information from your scholarly sources that actually further the opinions and the thoughts that you have about the scripture or about the questions that are posed or whatever the case may be. Finally, the fourth pitfall that I see is a reliance on things that are not considered scholarly sources for discussion boards. I have seen so many times people will cite something in their post, and I'll go to try and figure out that citation to try and see where it came from because I like the point that was made, or maybe I want to argue against it, so I'm trying to get a little more context. And what I'll find too often is that when I follow their link, I end up on some random person's blog post, looking at some random devotional type post related to the scripture we're dealing with or something like that. It's not a peer-reviewed or an academic source in any way, shape, or function. This is one of those things, it's a pitfall that's easily avoided. Warnings are given in almost every bit of instructions that are given to students in the online classroom not to use sources that aren't scholarly. Once again, this is another one of those things, just like all the rest of the pitfalls. You're a graduate student. You should know better. If it isn't a scholarly source, don't use it. If it's not a peer-reviewed journal, if it's not some sort of academic commentary, if it's not some sort of academic textbook, don't use it. Just leave it out. If you want to read it for devotional purposes, that's fine. If you want to read it in order to help develop further your thoughts on a subject, that's fine. But don't use it as a scholarly source. Do your research. Now, for the third and the final question, I want to answer number 3. How can you succeed in online discussion boards? The first thing is really simple, but it's also one that people overlook all the time. If you want to be successful at discussion boards, read all of the instructions, not just the first few lines. Don't just skim through and find out how many words you have to have and how many scholarly citations you have to have. Read all of the instructions. Find out everything that your professor is looking for in this assignment. And that means that you not only just read the instructions and you just read the form prompt, but you also need to go and you need to read the rubric as well. There is always, in all online classrooms now, there are rubrics, and it tells you how professors award points in each category. And there are usually categories on the discussion boards for grammar. There are categories for word count. There are categories for formatting, whether you're using Turabian or APA or MLA format, whatever the case is for your degree and for your purpose. There are categories for the level of your content. Is it up to grad level or is it not? Is it substantive or is it not? Go through all of these things, your instructions, your rubric, and even look and make sure the professor hasn't made any announcements with additional information about your discussion boards as well. As a lot of times specific professors will have specific want lists for how you do your forum posts. Pay attention to all of these things, and a lot of times the easiest thing you can do to make sure you're successful at a discussion board forum in the online classroom is, just read the directions. Don't be like the dad on Christmas Eve night that's trying to put together a swing set without the instructions and has leftover bolts at the end. Read all of the instructions so that when you get done with your forum post, you will have everything that's required, so that even if your writing sucks, you will get high scores in all of the other categories because you read the directions and met the requirements. The second tip for being successful in online classroom discussion boards is to make sure that you have your formatting on point. For me, in seminary, we use Turabian format, or Chicago, whichever way that you want to look at that. But in Turabian, we use a footnotes and bibliography style of citing sources within the paper and listing our sources at the end of a paper. And in the discussion boards, most classes are requiring that you use that same strategy for your post. Yes, it seems weird because it seems like you're posting a Facebook post and then adding footnotes and a bibliography at the end of it, but that's what's required, that's the way it works, so that's what we want to do. One of the things that you can do, and this goes along with number one, to make sure that you're successful when it comes to online discussion boards, is learn the formatting for whatever format it is that you're supposed to use in your degree program. If that's Turabian or if that's APA, make sure that you know what your pagination is supposed to look like, where the page number is supposed to go, how are the lines supposed to be spaced, all of those things. Where are footnotes supposed to be? Are they supposed to be in line? Are they supposed to be at the bottom of the page? Are you supposed to have a bibliography? Is it supposed to be a works cited page? How is the bibliography or that works cited page supposed to be formatted? What's the spacing between each source? Is there supposed to be a hanging indent? All of these things can score you points on the rubric that you need to be successful on discussion boards. Pay attention to the little things, and the big things in your assignments will work themselves out. The third tip for being successful in the online classroom discussion board is to write well. So let's get a little bit more specific about what I mean by write well. For one, you need to make sure that you answer all of the prompt for that week. So like in the example that we just gave a minute ago from my current class that I'm in Old Testament, there were about 6 questions that I was supposed to answer within the different sections of my forum post. One of the easiest things you can do to make sure that you write well, even if your answers are terrible, make sure that you specifically address each and every one of the questions or statements or topics that you're required to address in that specific post. Don't leave anything out. Don't skip a question. Don't avoid a question because you don't know an answer. Write something for every single question, even if it's terrible. One other way that you can make sure that you're writing well, and this is one that I particularly struggle with a lot because I tend to be kind of long-winded when it comes to my writing. Write concisely and eliminate all the fluff. When you are in college, whether it's undergraduate or grad school, your paper should not be filled with high school fluff in order to reach a word count. You should be able, no matter what the topic is, to develop and formulate a succinct and a coherent argument or answer to the question and meet the word count without using a bunch of fluff. Don't explain things that are generally understood by everybody in the class because they're all a part of the same assignment. Don't explain things from the textbook that people were perfectly able to read themselves as they read through their own reading assignment for that week. Just leave that fluff stuff out and address the questions or the statements or the arguments that you are supposed to address based on the prompt that you've been given. And one of the most impressive things that you can do in the discussion board space that will impress professors, and I have found this to be true in all of my classes, learn to interact well in your writing with the scholarly sources that you cite. Like we talked about in the Pitfalls just a second ago, don't just cite something just for the sake of meeting that requirement of having this many scholarly sources. Cite something and then interact with whatever it is that you're citing. Or summarize something and then interact with that summary from your scholarly text. Don't just cite things. This is one of the easiest ways to improve your writing, and that is to learn how to interact with scholarly research in a substantive way. And the last pro trick when it comes to being successful in the discussion board space in an online classroom is to always be seeking to further the discussion. What professors are looking for is they're looking for your original ideas, thinking about a topic that are going to spur on more conversation about that topic. Now, I understand and I realize that you're only required to reply to 2 people, maybe 3 at the most, and there's not going to be any discussion that goes on beyond those 3 posts, let's just be honest. But when your professor sees that you end a reply with a question, maybe you ask the person that you're replying to a question, that is you hinting to the professor, hey, I am trying to further this discussion, whether this person responds or not. And what that does is that puts you in your professor's eyes as someone who is actually legitimately trying to further the discussion just by simply putting a question at the end. One that I often put at the end after I just get done absolutely shredding somebody's argument because they were lazy, like we talked about in the Pitfalls. They were lazy with their post in the first place, and I ripped it to shreds because of their lack of logic and thought and effort. And then at the end, I'll put, what do you think? And that simple question at the end has gotten me so many comments from professors over the years that I've been in school praising me for trying to further the discussion. Do those little things that help you stand out above everybody else. So, those are my top tips, tricks, and even some of the most common pitfalls that I've seen during my time as an online student in the discussion board space of the online classroom. If you have any other questions maybe that I didn't address today, or if you have a question about how something works or about how you can improve on one area or another, please drop those questions down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer those as they come in. If you found this content helpful or if it benefited you in any way, would you do me a favor and smash the like button down below? It helps out a lot. If you'd like to see more content like this in the future, just go ahead and smash the subscribe button while you're down there, and you'll be notified anytime a new video drops. Thanks for watching. Remember, God is always good.